Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I'm your host, Jaime, CMO at World Football Summit. Today, we finally welcome our friend Rayde Luis Baez to the show, which is something that I've been trying to pull off for months, and I am thrilled we finally made it happen. Why? Well, to me, Rayde is someone who the football industry can learn tremendously from. Among many other things, he has experience in consulting for some of the biggest firms in the world. He has an 8-year career at EuroLeague Basketball. He currently is founder of Sporthink and The Connect, where he helps sports business define their partnership strategies, understand the role of technology in the sports business, and how to build a sound business strategy that fuels growth. But most of all, he's a great guy to talk to. In fact, for those of you looking to start your career in the sports industry, make sure you listen to Rayde explain his own story of how he got there. To me, he's a living example of a framework that we have discussed in the show before. Of course, Rayde has a huge passion for the sports industry, like pretty much the majority of us here. But he's also someone who has managed to add tons of value across several realms to the industry. Partnerships, application of technology, improving their financial acumen, and so on. So, if you're in a similar space, make sure you really understand how your skills can add value to any organization in the industry. Going back to the episode, I wanted to bring Rayde to the show to talk about many things, including the current ownership models in football. And we cover in depth the multi-sport model, investment funds, and the synergies these models create. Rayde, in fact, was one of the 16 industry experts invited to a workshop during WFS Europe to talk about data governance in football. Examples of leagues, clubs, and other sports organizations that stand out as examples of using the financial resources they have received to improve their sports business and their fan engagement initiatives is another topic we discuss. Third, we discuss frameworks for innovation in sports and the debate between evolving the product without modifying the core essence. This is something that EuroLeague Basketball has done remarkably well, as Rayde will explain. Fourth, how the football industry compares to the basketball industry and what it can learn from it. Finally, we also have time to talk about the future, specifically the role that Web3 could have in sports and why context is such an important element to see it succeed. In sum, this is a masterclass that goes all over the place. Remember, you can download your free copy of a special report on ownership and governance on our website, www.worldfootballsummit.com, or through the link in the show notes that summarizes the workshop that Rayde participated in quite well. And also, you can now enjoy our early bird offer for WFS Europe in Sevilla on September 20th and 21st. Purchase your ticket today and benefit from a 25% discount on all tickets to the event. Make sure you hurry up though. The offer expires on February 21st. The biggest football industry event is already on the horizon. So, if you want to join the leaders that will shape the future of football, this is your opportunity. Head over to www.worldfootballsummit.com, again, www.worldfootballsummit.com, and buy your ticket right now. And with that, on to our conversation with Rayde Luis Baez. Well, Rayde, finally, I've been able to have you for as a guest for the World Football Summit podcast. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jaime and the WFS family for having me. For me, it's an honor. I consider myself part of the crew, and I'm really happy that we finally made it.
A very important member of the crew indeed, because the work that you did in Sevilla a few months ago was just amazing. You were all over the place, in panels, in workshops, which is what we're going to talk about today, and generally just speaking to all attendees. But before we go into details, Rayde, in case anybody is a bit lost, can you tell us more about yourself and what you're up to now. And I guess I'm curious, why is it that you chose this career path?
I mean, it's almost a very long story, but I'll make it short. I mean, first of all, I'm Dominican, and that's how I like to present myself. I'm from the Dominican Republic, a proud Dominican, born and raised there. And I come from a different pathway. So in terms of academics and my initial professional experience, I studied economics. I specialized in corporate finance, then did banking and finance as a master's, a postgraduate course, actually here in Barcelona. But I've been in love with sports since I was very little, especially basketball, which is my family sport. Not only myself, my cousins, my brother, all of us, we all play basketball. So, and my dream, going back to the beginning, it was to play basketball professionally. So as a living, I wasn't that good, or at least I wasn't that consistent, I would say. And then had the opportunity to come to Europe to continue my studies. As I said, banking and finance here in Barcelona. And I was working for a big four firm, for KPMG in Dominican Republic. Managed to also work for KPMG here in the office in Barcelona. And in my second year here, I had the passion for sports, right? And that was way back when it wasn't that popular to have masters in sports management and things like that. And the University, Pompeu Fabra University here in Barcelona, had a business school that was called EDEC before, but now it's called the Barcelona School of Management. And they launched the first edition of the sports management course and master's degree. So I enrolled that. I was part of the first cohort. We were like 13 in the class. There I met my longtime partner and good friends since there, and that was kind of it. Because of an academic curiosity, I started studying that, and was about 2008, at the burst of the financial crisis that we had there, that I decided to jump in headfirst to sports. So with those good friends that I met in the Masters in Barcelona, we set up our first company. And we started creating an event that was designed to create opportunities for professional or hopeful professional players, both in basketball and football. But a few years after that decision, and it was late 2009, I got the opportunity, what I consider the job of a lifetime, and it was the opportunity to work at EuroLeague basketball. And that's where I would say my full career in sports started. And I was there almost over 8 years in total. And for me, it was the most gratifying part of my career. Then, new challenges came. I decided to take a managing director position for a big Austrian agency, sports marketing agency, which for me was a great school in terms of managing people, complex relationships, cultural differences, and so on. And almost 3 years in that role, then we decided to part ways. And then, since I was kind of anxious for doing something, then I started the Connect, which is what defines what I've been doing, for over a decade in EuroLeague and then in this agency, which is actually bringing, partnership making opportunities, but with a mindset of creating synergies that are positive for the businesses. And that's the core of my operations or my business since 2018 is with the network of brands that I know, the network of properties that I know, understanding their needs and try to build a solid foundation for a partnership. And I've been doing so, I would say, I wouldn't say quite successfully. I think that is for the clients to say. But for me, it's really gratifying, and it has allowed me to actually live in a way in which I have the flexibility to pick the projects that I want to get involved in, and to help and work with brands that and companies that I really admire and admire the people that are behind those brands and companies. And that's what I keep doing until now. There's certain specialization in terms of geographical areas because of my background as Dominican. We are very well connected to the U.S. and the Americas in general. So bridging the two worlds, Europe and Americas, has been quite of a specialty, I would say. And I've been working a lot with top professional companies in the U.S. and brands that want to cross the bridge either way towards Europe or from Europe to the US, right? And I have a second project which we saw a need that was still unfulfilled, which is how big organizations, namely football clubs or basketball clubs or any other type of big property, confronts the decisions and the potential investments in technology. So we've partnered with different organizations that specialize in different areas of what we could call technology procurement. And we kind of created with these partners and others within our ecosystem a concept that is called technology as a service, which is basically shifting the financial perspective of the technology investments. So, but football clubs and sports organizations are not designed per se to actually be able to hold that amount of technology without it generating revenue. So the way we envision that with these capital and technology partners is that we shift that and move towards an OPEX situation in which these partners that we have are able to make the original investment and lease back the technology to the organizations in a business model and help them exploit that to the best of capacities, so the same technology generates the revenue to pay itself. So in that regard, and those are very, I would say, long-lasting processes because are big investments. We are now in several conversations, as you know, with the shift in the way La Liga has first sustained financial control and then secondly has incorporated private equity money with the CVC deal for the development of the game. A great part of those funds need to go into updating of facilities, internationalization, and the bottom line, it needs to go to producing more revenue for the clubs and the ecosystem in general. So basically that's what we're doing. And since we are working in finance now and investments in sports, as you know, is very popular now.
Yeah.
And I think that's the topic of our conversation now, the acquisition of clubs and entities. And we are involved in a couple of conversations of those, helping investors and ownership groups to actually be able to find that commonality that will effectively and eventually lead into an ownership change of several professional football clubs and basketball clubs in Europe.
Well, first of all, Rayde, congratulations on your career. And I honestly mean that because I have the privilege to speak with a lot of students, and you have what they would describe as an ideal career because you started off in consulting, you went into a major property like the EuroLeague. Then you started your own thing where you're actually doing partnerships, but you're also looking into technology, how that technology translates into the business. But anyway, I digress. As you said, you participated in a workshop in World Football Summit. And fruit of that workshop, we published a report on governance and ownership trends in the football industry, which is, on one hand, what I want to talk to you about today. And then the second topic is related to your career in EuroLeague basketball to see how they compare. So I want to start with, discussing a little bit about the workshop. I want to know, you were there, no? So what stood out from the session? Why do you think such a workshop was necessary? Just a general description of that before we go into details of some of the conclusions.
there were owners of multi-club groups of different origins, Americas, Europe, operators in the revenue side of the business, consultants. Amazing. It was an amazing cast. So in that workshop, I think the topic, is very timely because we are seeing a very rapid shift in terms of how sports is almost being commoditized into a financial instrument or operation, and it has to do with a couple of things that we'll go when we go into the detail of the report. But the most important part is that the people that were there, you can consider them members of legacy ownership families. They understand very well how sports is evolving, and it goes to show that sports, although in the case of football in particular, is a matter of passion, but the passion evolves because there's a business behind it. And that's the first premise that you need to have in your minds when you're talking about investments into sports and why, right?
Exactly. And going into a little bit of the conclusions, one of the things that stood out is that multi-sports conglomerates were identified as the most optimal model. And this is a model that I think you know about. We'll talk about an example later on, but why do you think this is the case? Why was it identified as one of the most optimal governance models?
I think, and in my opinion, I voted for that option in the process that we did in terms of giving opinions, because I definitely believe in synergies and in a synergetic approach to management. And the second side is actually from the pure financial perspective. So that's why the prototype of the investors is very specific in this juncture. A lot of American investors, a lot of hedge fund or big investors or finance people that have experience in sports in the US are investing in Europe and in other places. Is because of the financial aspect. Because in a macroeconomic situation like the one that we are, that there's inflation here or there, foreign exchange devaluations compared to the dollar or the euro. One thing for certain is that at a certain level of sports globally, and if we focus on football in Europe, so first divisions, even second divisions, so professional football, in the long run, so from now to the future, barring exceptions that we might have, you will have that asset to serve as a very well reserved asset, so value reserve asset. So you make an investment there, and if everything goes normal in the long term, your investment will have a multiplier value at the end of the tenure, so 5, 7 years, 10 years, or whatever that might be. That's I think those are the two perspectives for me that why multi-club and multi-sports ownership groups are interesting, because you can integrate a very synergetic organization in which the learnings of one area can apply to the second. And in the example that I guess that you're referring to, which is Redburn, AC Milan, New York Yankees, there's a clear example on the value that can bring, but you can name many others. You'll have NBA owners buying Premier League clubs or La Liga clubs. Actually, you have NBA owners that have La Liga clubs, like in the case of Mallorca. Yeah. So the synergetic approach there was purely commercial. It's not about creating talent in Phoenix and bringing it to Mallorca. It's about creating a partnership structure like with PayPal that apply to Phoenix and apply to Mallorca, for example. So that perspective is very unique, and that's a great opportunity for actually making that holding group successful, both financially and sporting.
3 things that stand up from your answer is, well, first off, I've been speaking to other people that are experts in the space like yourself, and their feeling is that it's actually that passion that people have for sports that is a big reason why football is generally resilient to market corrections, which is why, to your point, the value of those investments increases over time. Then also you talked about synergies, which I think is the key word there. How can you leverage synergies between different properties? And then what you were mentioning now with Mallorca, I actually had, we welcomed Felix Torralba, Chief Revenue Officer at Mallorca, to the World Football Summit podcast before. And he was actually speaking about how they learn from the talent at the Phoenix Suns organization to kind of help grow the Mallorca brand here. And even how the Mallorca brand opens their eyes over there. So it's a dual approach there, no? But in any case, and yeah, as you mentioned, that example with AC Milan and the New York Yankees is very interesting. Do you see long-term potential in those initiatives, or different sport properties that may not be on paper very related, but then they get together and then they start, hey, let's target your fans and you target my fans and see if there's opportunities there?
Absolutely. There's a common saying that money. If you follow money, you find a way, right? But evidently, when we are looking at the AC Milan case, we are seeing the Yankees, because they did also something about merchandise, kind of cross-selling, and evidently the New York Yankees brand is one of the most recognizable brands in the world. Although many people in the industry will tell you that here in Europe, most of the people that buy it because of the New York reference, not necessarily because they know it's a baseball club. So I think that working with AC Milan, which is a very recognized brand in Europe, will help them go deeper into that awareness situation, right? But when you look at what you can call the cap table of that operation, it's not just the Yankees going into AC Milan, which now have the Yankees president has a board seat at Milan. Is also that in the group of investors, directly or indirectly, you are kind of needing a net that will be, if operated correctly, will be the most synergetic that I've seen to date. Then when you put the potential of all the investors in the Red Beer operation to AC Milan, which was great for them in terms of de-risking the investment, but it's even greater in terms of commercial opportunities. And I know very well the new commercial director of AC Milan, and if I know him very, very well, as I do, he sees already the opportunity to be able to tap into that network, to be able to leverage commercial success. But what you have is in those ownership groups, you have very wise business people that not only own those teams, they own hospitality groups, they own financial firms, they own industrial firms, whatever it might be. And that again is also a space for learning and opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's one of the main benefits of this these new dynamics around the professionalization of ownership models. It really opens up the network and the learning opportunities beyond the sports industry. And how can you pick and choose based on that network, talent, resources, learnings that you can apply to the football industry to help it blossom as an industry, So yeah, that's very interesting. We were once discussing how, for example, Celta de Vigo, a club here in the north of Spain, is using the funds that they've gotten from the CVC operation with La Liga to foster innovation through their Galicia Sports Tech 360 initiative. They're also using it to drive the internationalization of the brand and even give it more thought to their business processes rather than their performance on the pitch, right? Which to me seems the way to go. But this, I think, raises two questions. One, do you think in general the football industry is operating this way? And I guess the second is, are there any other examples that you can think of that can be used as a benchmark?
mean, on the first question, there are two perspectives to that answer. There's one main difference that compared to American sports we have here in Europe, which is promotion and relegation, and that's a huge risk factor. And it's a risk factor both in economic terms, because if you go demoted from first division to second division, evidently revenue for the next season is less. The only league that has a structure that allows a soft landing into the relegation is the Premier League, because they have a economic structure that allows that, and it doesn't mean necessarily that those that get relegated go up right back the next year, even though they go with a balloon payment that exceeds the rest, because usually second division leagues are more competitive than the first division league, right? There's less differences between the capabilities, the sporting capabilities, and that's one of the considerations. The other consideration to that is that as management, evidently you have a sports team and you want it to win, and part of the business is making that team, that squad, winning. But that's something that you cannot control 100%. What you can control is how you work with your community, how you work commercially, how you instill the different commercial and revenue levers in the operation, so it's sustained regardless of the results. And that's very difficult for the European mindset, although people is shifting to that because of what we were referring to at the beginning. Sports entity ownership has a very big component on value preservation over time. But the opportunity is that if you seize the moment you are at the top and make the appropriate investments and have a very good sports department, that they can, keep category, which is the first objective, then get close or into European positions, because, playing Europe excites the fan bases, but also means more revenue. So you need to do that, but sport results are like that. You cannot control that 100%. You can make all the best investments and best decisions and still not make it. There's a luck component. But if you seize that opportunity and invest in renovating your stadium, invest in engaging more your fan base, in identify your global fan base, because let's think of the globality of the people from Galicia, which are the people that migrated the most out of Spain historically, and you have people that support Celta de Vigo across the planet for sure. If you are able to engage those people and have them part of that value proposition of your club, regardless of it goes to first or second division, you will be able to maintain value in the long time. Then, with appropriate investments in sports, you can make it. So it's about value preservation mostly. You need to do the investments now that allows you to have a safety net for your investment and your ownership that continues to generate revenues in the future.
Oh, thanks for that. And actually, you talked about the promotion and relegation, and I think this is a great segue into the next part of the conversation, which is based around your experience in EuroLeague basketball. Before asking you about the benefits of a closed league, I do want to ask, do you see similar dynamics happening in the world of basketball in general as the ones that we're seeing in the football industry?
I mean, in terms of absolute value related to football, the difference is tremendously big. Evidently, football conquers all in Europe, but in basketball, especially at the trench of the EuroLeague clubs, you see growth in revenue, growth in value, and growth in positioning, in part because they are part of the EuroLeague. But I think that a different model is possible, even if what you're trying to do is try to combine the best of those both worlds. I don't think that the clubs in the basketball scene of the EuroLeague will have the value that they have if they weren't part of it, and if the league wasn't as it is, which is a semi-closed league, because that semi-closedness is actually what dilutes or minimizes the inherent risks of less revenue or less appeal because you might not be playing the league and so at some point. But evidently, the sports landscape in Europe is dictated by tradition, mostly is dictated in a certain terms. And what you need to consider when you're comparing organizations of the sort is their structural nature. Are they private organizations? Or are they public service organizations? Then another consideration is, are they supposed to, let's say, be for revenue? Or are they supposed to be for social empowerment? And the other part is who controls and makes the decisions in terms of financial and governance and so on. And that's what I think is at the core of the debate. Not necessarily if it's close, semi-close, if you have 10 picks or 10 that are rotating each year. It's a matter of who takes the decisions based or thinking of the investments that certain business people or ownership groups, which can be fans, like in the case of Barcelona or Madrid, do in having a certain team field in football or in basketball or whatever other sport.
Well, thank you for that framework, because it's very useful to kind of get of that debate whether it should be a closed league or an open league or not. It's just another angle, and I think it makes much more sense. And the truth is that the EuroLeague is such a great product, no? I mean, it's just attracted so many fans, sponsors. So, I mean, that's really a success case, no? I guess for me, this begs the question, though. Do you think that with the, let's say, or with quality investments and significant investments, that basketball at a global scale, if it's not already, can it become a quote unquote threat to football in terms of popularity, reach, and even commercial opportunities?
No, but I would say something. As a media product, because of the rules of the game, basketball has the advantage, and the NBA is the perfect case to illustrate that, to engage better the new generations, because it's a shorter game, a more fast-paced game, and you could, condense focus in different moments of the game, namely towards the end. So because of the nature of, you don't have ties in a basketball game. Mm-hmm. You need a winner, so you can focus attention to the last 5 minutes of a close game. And that will make up for the first 35 minutes of a game that was inconsequential. So that football, you cannot have that because of the rules. Mm-hmm. And that's a big debate, is how we make something to spec to how we consume now when we don't change the core of the product. And that's another part of the discussion around how to manage the product. Another thing is how you package, how you create storylines, how you go into locker rooms, how you follow players, and so on. And La Liga is a great example. The Premier League is a great example, but that goes so far. So that actually is very similar to kind of the issues or the hurdles that the NBA has in Europe. They cannot rely entirely on their full game because of the time difference. They have managed to put games on Sundays and Saturdays that are on prime time here in Europe, which helps. But they basically go into the content and storyline development to actually be able to engage with an audience that they don't have in prime time, right? So that's kind of how you can play in the product. So if you go into that, let's say, detail, and as you can see, there's many layers, and it's very kind of complex to actually be able to put everything in perspective. The productization of sport forcefully needs to have a more commercially, financially driven perspective than the traditionalist approach, because either you cannot do both. So football has an advantage, which is that it's so popular and so robust as a global product that commands a lot of revenue, a lot of attention still, right? Mm-hmm. So, true. And actually, it's logic. But why? So FIFA has the biggest football product ever, which is the World Cup. How that is possible? Because the World Cup is every 4 years. Well, now 3.5 years. We're going to the US, but UEFA has what FIFA doesn't have, and what they want to have, which is they have the most strong brands in the history of football. The Premiership clubs, the La Liga clubs that participate in the different UEFA competitions are the most recognizable brands in the world football history, I would say. So, and that brings value. So having games with Real Madrid, with Barcelona, with Juventus, with Manchester United, with Atletico, that commands attention, that commands revenue in television, that commands sponsorship money, etc., etc. So the problem, and what I would say very simplistically, I don't get into the politics of sports, is that those brands feel that they bear all the risk, and they lend their brand equity to an organization that generates more than the global regulator of the sport that has the World Cup, which is the tournament that all players want to play and win, but they don't get to have a saying on how things should be run, how things should be modernized, if we need to change rules or not. And going back to the EuroLeague basketball example, contrary to what people may know, the EuroLeague plays with its own set of rules. They play based on the FIBA rulebook, and they made adaptations that made the product better. So it's more fast-paced, it's less stoppage at the end of the games, it's has elevated the competition level to a never seen level before, and now this season is the most competitive ever in 23 seasons, and you could see more than 40% of the games ending for a margin less than 5 points, which that makes a very exciting end of the game. So that makes people want to tune in to actually see what's happening. The EuroLeague is owned majorly by 13 clubs that are shareholders. You could say Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Olympique, as well Lyon, Fenerbahce, Panathinaikos, Maccabi, all this. But there are other organizations that are shareholders and benefit from that. Some national leagues that publicly say that they are against the model, but they are part of the shareholding structure. The Union of European Basketball Leagues that has a seat there. So, governance can always be better, can always improve. Maybe we'll see some changes into that in the future. But the reality is that everyone has benefited because of the EuroLeague is there. From the fan perspective, I do understand a fan that says, my team used to be able to qualify to the EuroLeague, and now it's not able to qualify because you have a very narrow window. Basically, you need to win or get to the final of the Euro Cup, which is the second tier competition run also by EuroLeague Basketball, to qualify to it. That's what Valencia has done recently. But what not many fans analyze is what their club's ownership is doing to actually be able to cement their projects as a viable top-level European basketball property. So when you look at how, if you want to have a chance to compete, I do respect that, but is the ownership making the investments appropriate? Is your arena up to the modern standards in seating, in facilities? Is your team budget able to pay the best players that can make you compete? Because in the end, what people, not only the basketball craze fans, but in general sports fans and in general the general public, want to see is a good product on television or in media. So what we will see with the EuroLeague that you couldn't see in other, let's say, non-football sports, is that in a very short-term future, you maybe will see a team in Paris or a team in London or a team in any other place But that is not because of out of a whim the EuroLeague owners decide that we want to play London or in Paris or whatever. It's because there are investors that have been investing already since 5-10 years ago in developing a team that can command that, let's say, area, that city. And there's a very strict set of rules for you to be able to opt to that, because it's about the quality of the game and it's about, you know, the equilibrium across the landscape.
Couple of ideas. First off, in the comparison between UEFA and FIFA, that is why FIFA is trying to push for a shorter time frame to organize the World Cup, because obviously they realize they have the biggest football product, but because of the frequency they play, they're not able to maximize revenues. No? And the second idea is, I actually heard that this very week on another podcast, the CMO podcast. And basically what they were discussing is that the best brands are able to innovate, but without forgetting who they are and their essence, which I think is something that the EuroLeague has successfully done. They haven't changed the game of basketball. They just have changed a few things here and there that improve the experience of watching basketball. But the game, in essence, it's pretty much the same. So that's kind of like the challenge that they were able to overcome, and that's the challenge that other sport properties and sports in general needs to overcome. But anyway,
but that's a very good comment, because, and this is something that goes to any type of decision-making structure in life, I would say, which is to change things. There are always easier or harder ways to do it. If you look at sports, and you mentioned the EuroLeague took the hard route. Mm-hmm. They had a clean break. There was a period of uncertainty the first couple of years, but they managed to, bring all these stakeholders to the table. Even FIBA back then was in the table, then the different leagues, and there was a system that worked. The clubs have been able to multiply by 10 their business that they get before, so they can have the best players playing outside of the NBA and generate a lot of the talent that is now dominating the NBA. And kudos to Real Madrid for signing Luka Doncic with 13 years old, developing him and helping him be the best player in the league. So they need a seat at the table to be able to bring their perspective, bring their, I would say, experience into having a model, a product that works for everyone. So let's see what happens. But I would say that basketball, by far, in that area of governance, is teaching and leading the way for what football should be doing.
True. Couldn't agree more. And I think this is a perfect segue into the final segment of the conversation that I want to have with you, because you talked about complexity in terms of evolving the game and how, at the end of the day, the interest of the fan is really at the core of many of these decisions. Now, one of the technologies that promises to empower fans most is everything related to Web3, which is a space you're also very knowledgeable about. So we're talking about NFTs, fan tokens, DAOs, you name it. Now, do you think once this technology is massively adopted, will this help create new ownership models that will be sustainable? Or will it just be too much, too complex to actually manage? So in essence, does it have potential? That's my question.
I think that technology, like any generational technology shift, has a lot of potential. I think it has been misplaced. I think we came out of a very weird time with the pandemic, and I would say that the hype made it something else. For starters, we refer to NFT as a product, but NFT is a technology. So it is not per se the product, it's non-fungible technology token. So it's a way of applying blockchain technology. So what we call NFTs needs to start be calling digital collectibles based on non-fungible tokens or fungible tokens or whatever other type of tokenization they might invent. I definitely don't think that faceless multilateral ownership is something that could be very widespread, or at least not in a majority shareholder position. So DAOs owning the majority of a football club or a company or anything else, it's very complex and very hard. It is hard as it is if you go to the stock market and see that, I don't know, Microsoft or whomever has millions of shareholders, and those shareholders, depending on the structure, their opinion count more or less, or they can vote on decisions or remove boards and so on. I don't see an everyday club being run properly by the use of a DAO. Then you can apply DAOs or any other form of tokenization to specific areas of it. So, which is what we started to understand as the utility of fan tokens or whatever that was. But what I come to say is that we need to start looking technology at face value, not at hype value. So blockchain technology, tokenization of processes is a must. I think it is transformational, as when we went from cash to credit cards, and as we went from physical credit cards to mobile wallets. It is that transformational, but needs to be put in the proper context on how you can apply that. Cool. Tokenization of ticketing, serve security issues, data gathering and understanding of usage issues, of course. Would tokens to vote for the squad be something even wise to propose? It is not, because you need certain decision-making processes to be taken by the people that is best prepared to do that. So yeah, I definitely believe that Web3 technology in general is transformational. It has been misused, and hopefully we'll start to see better cases of digital collectibles application, tokenization in ticketing, tokenization in back office operations, etc., etc.
I agree. I hope that all of this, let's say, correction that this space has suffered during 2022 kind of wipes out all of these speculative projects and just leaves the ones that are actually good for business, no? In any case, Rayde, I want to be respectful of your time, and I just have a few questions left. Based on this complexity, these new technologies emerging, these new dynamics in governance, these market corrections that we are facing, I mean, there's a lot going on. But based on your expertise and the very powerful network that you have, and you speak with a lot of people from all over the place, are you optimistic about the future of the sports industry? What are you most excited about? And I guess the flip side to that is there anything you wish the industry is cautious about?
I'm most excited about let's say, the openness to outside investment into the industry, either for ownership or for technology or, you name it. The cautiousness aspect of how we approach financing and for what is also something that concerns me. Is you need to be able to understand, like any other venture company or enterprise, the investments need to have a purpose of generating or fortifying the revenue generation capabilities. In some aspects, and if we bring it to sports, that is talent, so having better players. That is having better infrastructure, so building things. That is applying technology, so that is, going out of your way to actually be able to bring new technology that elevates the experience. But you need to do that with reason. You need to make those decisions now, and it's very difficult because there's a bit of guessing. But if you understand the business, and in the case of talent generation, maybe it's more wise to invest in the academy because you can generate talent that you can liquidate at any point in time. So selling players, right? Which is one of the most prominent revenue levers of football clubs that usually we don't speak of when we talk about commercial revenue like game day or TV or whatever. So that's the one part. And then, being able to invest in infrastructure. Yeah, a lot of stadiums need updating, but needs updating with a clear mindset of how I can update the stadium, not because I want it to look new, but because I want it to be functional for today's now on today's fan experience in the stadium. But you need to have a clear proposition into why you make that investment to be able to report the returns to the ownership if it's own money, or to your lenders if it's debt or outside investment.
To your point, and this goes back to what we were discussing before, is the stadium is a core element of the revenue strategy of a club. So it's essential. But how can you innovate around it to adapt to what the fan is currently expecting from the match experience, so that you can buy both creativity but also respecting the essence? No?
That brought to me a discussion that I had a while in terms of how do you define a stadium experience? Is when you arrive to the stadium, or since when you are thinking that you want to go to the stadium? Because commercially speaking, and in terms of technology and how you implement things, there's a major difference. A stadium, the way we see stadiums here in Europe or in Spain specifically, is a very important part of the urban dynamics of a city. So if you invest in technology and into enhancing the experience, you need to think what value you can give back to the city, not because they force you to give you the license, but actually because it's good business for you. So it's about mobility in game days. It's about accessibility for not only people with limited or impaired situations or accessibility, but actually accessibility from street to seat. There's a certain set of criteria that technology can help you into actually be able to facilitate that experience from the moment you think that you want to go to a stadium. And that's something that the clubs need to start looking at, working integrally in the city and with top technological partners to actually be able to provide that. And that's something that we've seen a lot in the US. And hopefully we'll see more now with the new Bernabeu or the new Espai Barça and other developments in different cities like in Sevilla with Betis that will come soon and so on.
That's totally true. I mean, the match experience actually starts when there's that trigger, when the fan says, I want to go to that match, whether it's that same morning or 2 months before. But it also goes beyond the match day itself, because there's also a lot of memories tied to that experience. So how can you extend that memory so that the fan can say, hey, I want to do that again? No, that's the key, to have the fan come back again. Yeah. Anyway, Rayde, so based on what we talked about today, would you be willing to summarize in 3 points messages or ideas that you want to share with the audience?
I don't want to be too preachy, but I think that when looking at investors or looking into investments, look at the people first. Look at not only what the books tells you in terms of numbers and potential, but look at the people that will enable that to be a reality or exceed reality. I think that's the anchor of the investment, is the people that you will put behind that investment to actually be able to make it work. So that's one point. Think of the people behind the investments in both sides. That's important. The second point is the investment plan needs to have a concrete cadence and a concrete timeline and a concrete commercial purpose. So you are investing X for what? What is that you want to achieve with that investment at any level? Infrastructure, technology, talent, promotion, etc. That's a basic, but it's a must. And the third part is be open to innovate. Innovation is not contained or in a vacuum. It's not, we will do an innovation project that will end of this year. Innovation never ends. That's an appropriate innovation approach. If you want to innovate and keep up with the way your consumers react to your product, you need to be always iterating and open to incorporate aspects of modernization, technology, accessibility, strategy to be able to keep up with times. So those will be my three recaps.
Well, thank you for that. And it's very interesting because when I speak to other leaders in the industry, most of them say that the people part of it is the most important part and sometimes the most overlooked. But then that's actually what drives that innovation that you're talking about and that sustainable innovation that you're talking about. Anyway, Rayde, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time. I am curious. I'm going to ask you one final question. It's a very rapid fire one, but it just dawned on me. I needed to ask you this question because you're Dominican, meaning I'm assuming you're a big fan of baseball. You're very knowledgeable in basketball, and you're also tied to the football industry. So in a world where Rayde could choose any sport property in the world and that he could buy it, which one would it be?
It's tricky, but if I could, it would depend. As a good economist, everything depends on something. So it would depend on the region. But if I could buy an American property, I would buy a baseball club. If I could buy a European property, I would buy a EuroLeague basketball club. If I would invest in Africa or in Asia, maybe I would do football.
I think you're going to have to do a multi-club sports ownership model and have all of them. Anyway, Rayde, thank you so much. Where can people learn more about you, about the work that the Connect and Sporthink does?
I mean, the basic is LinkedIn. I am very active there. People can reach out. If I don't respond right away, please bear with me. But I usually post what we're doing or other thoughts to a newsletter that I publish very seldomly into LinkedIn. So yeah, people can find me there and in evidently social media, Twitter, Instagram, and so on, at Rayde Luis BT. So the same handle across the universe.
And I have to say this, but your newsletter does provide a lot of food for thought, so I highly recommend the audience to check that out. Anyway, Rayde, I could talk to you for hours. I want to thank you so much for your time. This has been an amazing conversation, and honestly, I do hope to have you back many more times in the show. So thank you so much for your time.
You just need to call. I'll be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Rayde. Have a great day. And there you have him. Rayde Luis Baez with a masterclass on the state of the football industry, innovation, and the lessons that can be learned from EuroLeague basketball. What were the key takeaways I took from this conversation? First, the key to the multi-sport model are the synergies that emerge among different sport properties to unlock new levels of growth. Not only that, it also opens up massive networking opportunities and possibilities to bring amazing talent to the industry. The second is how the football industry compares to the basketball industry and what it can learn from it. Obviously, the comparisons between the EuroLeague and certain initiatives that are being discussed in football today are unavoidable. But designing a closed or semi-closed league should not be at the core of the discussion when comparing both sports. Rather, you need to focus on three elements. The structure, meaning are they private organizations? Are they revenue driven? Or do they seek social empowerment? And from a governance perspective, who makes these decisions? Again, it is not about the leagues being closed or not. It is about the nature of the competition. Third, the truth is the football industry needs to innovate. It needs to evolve. But as we discussed, it needs to do so without forgetting its essence. That is in fact what the best brands in history have been able to do. Fourth, Web3 still has great potential to transform the sports industry, but it needs to be used within the right context and without forgetting how it supports the overall business strategy, not defines it. Finally, pay special attention to the 3 messages Rayde shared at the end of the conversation. Look at the people, not just the books. The anchor of any investment are the people who are running the business, making it thrive and focusing on defining and executing the strategy. Also, any investment plan needs to have a concrete timed commercial purpose. And finally, keep in mind that innovation never stops. It is a mindset that needs to be embedded in the culture of the organization. Is there anything else that stood out for you? If so, please reach out across social media and let us know. And remember, you can subscribe and rate the podcast on the platform of your choice. And of course, you can share it with colleagues and friends of the industry. And remember, grab a brief free copy of the report at our website, www.worldfootballsummit.com. Nothing else from my side. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the World Football Summit podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you next time.